All right, hey, thanks for tuning in today. For my live stream, I'm going to deviate from doing any contrib work on PHP and Drupal, and I wanted to experiment with WASM or WebAssembly and PHP and Drupal. If you're not familiar with WebAssembly, think of it as it's a way to do like assembly language, but delivering it over the web. So it's like being able to ship binaries through web technologies. In my personal experience, I know somebody who works at a local, like a big firm out of Milwaukee that does like CAD development and things like that. And they typically have an application built in C++ that you buy a license for, you download the executable, whatever. But a lot of people, like in Italy, want the subscription version of it. So they actually convert their C++ app to WebAssembly and ship it over the browser. And that's how they did their subscription model for something that's also distributed via like normal executables. It's been a really big thing in web tech. I haven't jumped into it as much since I'm mostly back end, like PHP, not necessarily front end and JavaScript stuff, which a lot of people using JavaScript have. That's where a lot of the tooling for WebAssembly lives, and Rust. Like I know Cloudflare has done some cool stuff. So if you're not sure what WebAssembly is, there's tons of resources on there. But in this stream, I wanted to finally dip back into a project I saw called PHP WASM, and WordPress has actually been doing some interesting work in this as well. So if you're not familiar, I wanted to just do a quick demo of the PHP and browser library, PHP WASM. So they have examples, and what I thought was cool is they do have an example of running Drupal 7. So right here, they show the code, and it should be running. It might be compiling. I actually don't know what happens under the hood, but you can see here they've got various code that kind of mimics Drupal 7's index.php, and this like doc root preload. There's files that are bundled in the WASM, and mocking some of the requests. So it's not actually running like PHP's built-in web server or something like that. It's literally running the script, but it works. Like here, you've got a Drupal 7 site, and you can go browse it. It's like this is all running in the browser. If I were to open a new tab, I actually don't even know what this looks like under the hood for if you wanted to inspect what was running. But if we do, I want to just show the network tab. If we run it, so there's various web workers and then mode PHP. So there are like some kind of like service workers, but it's all JavaScript that's running. And I was hoping, so here you go, WASM. So nothing to preview, but it's downloading from cache. So this is a compiled binary, these WASMs. So one thing that I've been able to infer is that there's a WASM file, which is the WebAssembly. Then there's the .data, and the data lets you send compiled assets, if you will. So a SQLite database, default images, sample database of, I'm assuming this is running with SQLite. I don't actually see that defined in here. But the fact is, when this runs, you have a default database and you're logged in. So I'm going to guess that it's running with SQLite in the backend. So to show what WordPress has done, this again, you can run any kind of code. Like, right, I can go to a demo here, load a demo, it runs. This isn't like a web server, if you will. This just lets you run arbitrary PHP code and lets you do you've got like a demo or a sandbox, a playground. Like Rust has this. Rust lets you run Rust in a web UI for like learning experiences. So WordPress has built this WordPress Playground. And let's go over here and see if it loads. I was having issues with this loading. I don't know if it's because of Brave blocking anything, but it should load and give us a fully working WordPress environment that's running with PHP's built-in web server and SQLite. But as you can see here, it doesn't get past preparing. And when I first saw this a few months ago, it worked. But when I wanted to come dive in, it wasn't working for me. So, all right, so we've got this demo here. I'm going to pick the default theme and click Start Playground. So this is an iframe it's embedded in. And maybe I need no, there should be no reason that it's an ad blocker that's causing the issue. So that's the one thing that makes it kind of hard to demo this, is it's not working. And I'm not sure if it's maybe due to a conflict with an extension I have. The user denied permission to use a service worker. Oh, 1 second. Site settings. Shoot. All right. Well, it's saying that I'm blocked permissions to the service workers, and that's one reason I'm assuming that's why it's not running. But either way, so it's not, there isn't the example, but there's plenty to go through and read. Like I want to figure out how, if I open the network tool, the network tab again, if I were to, let's actually open this iframe in its own, open a new tab and see if it'll work. Maybe it's some issue with it running in an iframe for me. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on. I was really hoping that this would work, but again, we can see the download should have. So here we go. We got PHP 8.0.js, WordPress 6.1. So it is, oh, sweet, it loaded. So we do have here, it's downloading PHP, JS, WordPress 6.1 JS. It's got the WASM, it's got the data, and we have a running WordPress site in our browser that's executing PHP via WebAssembly. So WordPress has done it. I like to see if we can do it for Drupal. I imagine it should be the same. It should be a little bit easier maybe, because WordPress, you can't build with Composer, so they have to do some build steps, and WordPress doesn't support SQLite out of the box. Drupal does. So I want to look at their build tooling and try to replicate this. I'm not sure how far I'll get. I usually do this for about 2 hours, but we'll see. And I know at the end I will push anything I come up with to GitHub so that we can jam on it some more. All right. So we've got it running. We've seen what this looks like. Let's inspect how things work. I'm going to go ahead and close this so it's not burning up extra resources. So let's look at their packages. I did a little bit of research beforehand, and they recently migrated to Yarn workspaces and split out packages. None of these packages are published to npm.js, so you can't fetch them. It's all bundled in, which I don't blame them. I wouldn't want to publish any of this because someone like me would take it and then they're responsible for it. Oh, hello. Thanks for joining in on the stream. So they have different packages. They have the CLI, PHP WASM. So they built their own PHP WASM library. Maybe because this one hasn't been as maintained. I'm not sure why. And then they have the client, which I think builds the iframe, and the WordPress plugin IDE. But the main thing that I found that seems to be the case here is the playground. So if we go into source, it has this WP build, and I was inspecting this a little bit. Basically, it's could be a bash script. So they use a Docker file. So right here it's saying build WordPress, and they launch 2 processes where they do Docker build. The tag is playground, and they have a Docker file that is like the build service for this. And then they use another Docker, they run that image and extract the output. So they're using Docker to do the build. And that's what we're going to go through and walk through at this moment. So let's pop open this Docker file and read through. So as a preface, I don't know anything about WebAssembly. I know that people are using it, but I figure like I don't need to know how WebAssembly works to review tooling to make it work. So it's kind of, we're going to do like a teardown, if you will. So they have this EMC scripting, EMS SDK. Let's find out what this is. EM scripting, program converting LLVM bytecode to JavaScript. Okay, so here we go. That's C++, which PHP is built on top of C++. So I'm assuming that's the magic that lets you convert PHP code, which is a scripting language built on top of C++, to WebAssembly. And we have a Docker image that's going to do the tools for us. So they have from, sets the shell, work directory is root. And here's where editor scripting lets you define like the zip URL that gets downloaded, the output file name, the theme, make directory root output. It installs the SDK. So this, I'm going to create a new Docker file for myself. Let's call this we'll make a build directory and start a new Docker file. And we'll go ahead and we're going to copy some of this verbatim. I'm going to ignore anything that involves arguments or variables and just hard code this to use the latest stable version of Drupal 10. You know, I want to strip away all of their enhancements and just get it running, and then we can layer those in. This way it's like understanding it without just copy pasting the magic. So, all right, so they got their arguments. They've got this root output, which we saw in that previous command. If I can open a new tab, let's reference this build.js along the way. Actually, I want to keep that other tab open. I'm going to pin it. So yeah, so it does Docker build, zip URL, file name, custom build arguments, Docker run. It takes the build directory, which is WordPress here. So this WordPress directory. And then it copies root output to output, which is mapped. So that's where this is very important to track. And then we've got the update of the EMS SDK. And then they download WordPress inside the same image. Get this WordPress version, patch SQLite, separate WordPress static files. So copy WordPress to WordPress. It deletes all the PHP files. Keep only the static files inside the directories. This might be important, but I'm going to skip that. For now, we'll see. Parasite editor's nested iframe to the surface worker. Sounds like an edge case to figure out after. Or maybe not move the static files to the final output directory. So maybe this has to happen up front. So move root output file name. Okay, so this is important here. So let's go. We're not going to download a version of Drupal. We're going to build it, which I made some scratch notes from previous of my other Docker files. So we're going to go ahead and go from Composer 2.5. Actually, I don't know why I have .5 here. We'll just do Composer 2. So it always takes the latest Composer. Work directory app. And then we'll run a Composer create project. So Composer create project. Let's just put this on new lines to make it easier to read. This one example did allow configuring the version. So let's just, here we go. We'll just hard code it for now. So Drupal version is the latest stable release of Drupal 10. We're going to do ignore platform requirements, so that way we don't need to, what do you want to call it? Install all the extensions. That way it just downloads. So let's follow their steps here. So we have a build. So we're doing a multi-stage build. So we've got our EMS SDK image. And then we've got our Composer build. So in this build, it's going to build it into /app/Drupal. So they're patching for SQLite. I'm going to copy this line here and then break it through. Separate Drupal static files. So we're going to copy Drupal to so the Drupal static, find PHP, delete, keep only static files inside the directories like. Oh, that's hard because they're really nested. Keep only the static files inside the directories like WP admin. I don't know WordPress's structure. I think those are like root. Max depth 1. Let's just change that to 5. because we need all the static files. Yeah, we'll just go for that. Pair the site editor's nested iframe to the service worker. Site editor initiates network requests that aren't routed through the service worker. That's a known browser issue. I think we're okay because we don't really have, this seems really specific to their editor. And then let's run this out. So we're not doing out file name. I'm just going to call it Drupal. Anywhere, actually. Yeah, I'm going to just say Drupal. All right, so let's move out to Drupal, then minify WordPress. Move non-default themes. Remove unused static files. Give. All right, well, I think this just helps reduce the size. So I'm going to keep that around just in case. Keep only CSS files that are read by PHP. I'm going to keep that too. Just for the fact that this cleans up and reduces the size. So I want to keep that just in case. So then they have a PHP CLI, which copies over WordPress and runs the installer. So this is where I'm going to copy over some code, and we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to install Drupal's, use Drupal's quick start. So I'll copy this and then explain it. So we're going to take PHP 8.1 CLI because Drupal requires 8.1 for Drupal 10. We use the same work directory in this image. So this installs the GD extension, opcache. I guess we don't need opcache. Let's keep it. Let's see what happens. Don't need Postgres. Don't need MySQL, but I do need, what is it? Let's make sure this is installed for SQLite. Let's do Docker PHP just to make sure I should know this, but it's always good to double check. Yep, sure is. All right. So I didn't copy. All right. And we'll keep the zip just in case. Actually, I don't think we'll need that because we already did build. So there we go. So we got, no. Am I copying the wrong? Oh, this is actually for P. That's why. This is. Okay. Because that was about adding MySQL. I didn't read. I just copy pasted. All right. So we're installing all of our extensions that Drupal needs, because otherwise the install will fail because it needs GD. So we're going to copy from vendor. And again, that's this image up here where I did the composer build. We're going to copy /app Drupal to Drupal. I should compare how they're doing it here. So from WordPress, here we go. Oh, is that one reason they do it in a different build? Okay. So I see one thing they're doing here. They have this all in the same image for building WordPress. So it's all in this root output. Oh, there's a bot. 1 second. Let me kill this chat message somehow. There. All right. I got to make sure I think this through correctly. So this is moving Drupal to, so make root output Drupal, move Drupal static. So really, I don't need this because we're not moving it to the final output. But what we'll do, so WordPress static, they move that to root output. And if we look at this build again, it copies from root/output. Okay, so they're constantly working on the modified version of WordPress, but not here. That's the odd part. So they're copying from root WordPress, but not the static one. So I need to make sure I do that correctly. So this has, I'm gonna make a note, creates app Drupal and app Drupal static. So we don't want that. So we want to copy from /Drupal and run the installer. Wait, hold on. Where did, yeah. So that's where they run their installer, install the WP CLI. And we're running the quick start script from Drupal that will install the demo umami theme. Maybe I should just change it to standard. No, we'll do the umami demo. So that way it's a more full-fledged example. So the umami demo is like a recipe magazine that Drupal provides as a sample. All right, so once they do an install, strip white spaces from PHP files. I'm just going to skip that. Again, it just minifies it. So now they have from, so this is actually going to be borrowing from this build. So what do? They remove WordPress from root. So they remove the build and then they copy over from PHP. So what we would do is they copy it from PHP. So we'd actually be doing the same. So this would now have the compiled Drupal code base with the SQLite database and files. Oh, what am I building? So what I'm doing is I'm inspecting, I'm trying to review the WordPress Playground, which runs WordPress inside of a service worker or inside of WebAssembly. So it's served, like you have WordPress, a PHP application running in the browser. And so I'm trying to dissect that and then build it, a version of it that runs Drupal 10. This would be really neat to find ways to, I don't think this would be great for contribution. Like if somebody wanted to try to like writing code because it's pretty static, but it is a really neat way to evaluate Drupal. And if we could make that simpler, like we have this project in the Drupal land called simplytest.me, which lets you build a project, and it'd be really hard to maybe do this dynamically because we'd have to build all the components, but it'd be a way to like try and spin up a vanilla Drupal site and see how it all works. All right, so here it copies from, we're not reusing an image here. So actually what I could do, I don't need this first step. Let's move this down here. I don't need an script in 2. We're going to copy from PHP app Drupal to I always like to be explicit, root Drupal. So that, like I said, that's going to have Drupal with the SQLite database, all the settings and images. The good question is, where does it stash the static? Let's see. Because it copies it to this WP. I'll put file name. I'm going to open package.json. You could have a Docker. Yeah, there are Docker images that do that. But the thing is, then you need to have Docker locally. The whole concept behind this is the fact that you don't need. So here, I'll actually just pull this tab out and let it run in the backend real quick. Well, I look at this package.json. So output file name 6.1. Okay, so that is dumping the static somewhere. So this site right here is hosted locally, like it's running in a browser. Like PHP is serving this website from the browser. There's no server running This is the true way to let people evaluate PHP-based software without needing PHP or Docker or other toolings. Like, it is in the browser. So that's what I want to explore, because it's a zero tool. There's no cost for the end user to evaluate. Okay, so I'm missing something here. I know that much. So what I'm going to do, copy from vendor, app. I'm going to copy Drupal static. There. I feel like that will help cover a base. Something doesn't, it feels like I'm missing something here. I think it'd be great to have set up with Project Browser Initiative. So that is one thing. Drupal is working on a Project Browser Initiative. If you've used WordPress, like the built-in like plugin manager, actually let's load that up. I'm gonna bounce back and forth a lot, and I should just keep this open. But so Project Browser is an initiative by Drupal to give that like App Store plugin browsing experience and just import projects into your site, or modules rather, to empower like site builders and make things a little bit easier. The question is, does it work? Like, how can it download and be added? So let's see how bad this breaks inside WordPress. Yeah. I'm gonna guess that it'd be really hard to do because it has to be compiled ahead of time. So Andy, like you're saying, if Project Browser could link to it, we would need a service that builds a WASM or WebAssembly build for each unique instance, which could be possible. It's not impossible. It'd essentially be taking our Simply Test Me service, and instead of this launching something on Tugboat, which if nobody knows what Tugboat is, it's like an ephemeral environment service. So it spins up environments, takes them down. If we could do that to build one-off WASMs, so that way you do get this instance. And at that point, if it is like using Docker for builds, it would just be a custom step in that build, which could hopefully be somewhat performant. All right, so we are at I've installed, EM script in 2. That's where I left off. So yeah, so they're copying WordPress, and since they reuse their own image, it has WordPress static already in the root. So I've mimicked that here. Post process, load scripts, concatenate scripts. Oh, this is important. Drupal has this as well, but I'm not sure what we'll do. Actually, I do know what we'll do. So let's do a run. Where are they doing that to? They're doing that inside WordPress. So we need a CP root Drupal web sites default, not default. Let's open the Drupal development trunk so I get these paths right, but it should be example.settings.local.php to root Drupal web sites default. This actually won't cut it. So Drupal has like a settings.local.php that lets you disable certain things, such as pre-processing of CSS and JavaScript, which does aggregation. Takes 50 JavaScript files, makes it into like 2 big ones based on context, if you're not familiar with that. So this is set up here in the settings.local, but in the copied settings.php, it's not automatically included. So if we go down to the bottom, we'll have to try something else. So let's do a because it might have been written to be, it might have been had its permissions changed. Maybe this isn't even needed, but let's make sure it's writable. Or yeah, make sure it's writable. Let's copy it, and then because I am not good at Bash at all, said no, we want to do a echo. Whatever. I'm pretty sure it'd be that appends to an end of a file. Yep, that should append to the end of the file. So again, this makes sure that we can write to website's default. We copy that example settings.local, which will turn off pre-processing of the JavaScript. Actually, why do this here when it can be part of this process? It should be done here. And then we don't need to worry about the access, and it will be copied over to the appropriate static as well. So let's just run that there. Is this going to error out? I think so, because it's going to treat those as actual variables. So let's replace. I don't know. Hopefully that works. I'm wondering if it will throw some errors because it's going to treat them as variables, but we'll find out. All right, so we're in here. Okay, bundle the .data file using mscripten. So we're at, we've got this here. We've copied over the static files. Just gonna copy this and dissect it. So move. We're in the root directory. Let's move Drupal. Wait, WordPress to /WordPress. Why are they doing it there? They just move stuff around so often. Whatever. Let's just copy and paste because they figured it out and I don't know yet. So output Drupal.data, preload Drupal, JS output to Drupal.js. If out file name is not equal to WordPress, then move WP data to blah. Well, we're going to keep it always the same. So I'm going to delete that. So this tracks file packager, Drupal.data, preload /Drupal, which we're in the root directory. We copied it over. Build assets. Let's look at that. So there's two files in here, ESM prefix and ESM suffix. Let's see what those do. They wrap the end of file. Export PHP module. All right, these are going to be needed. So inside build, create this file. Let's copy the contents. Just rename this to Drupal WP data file. Where is that coming from? Dependency file name. Out. The out file name, which is just Drupal. So we'll say Drupal.data. And we're not using a default theme, which that's got to be tied into some way else that I'm not aware of yet. So then we need the suffix, which is the closing bracket. All right. So we have these scripts. Did I copy the copy? Yes, we're copying those over. Add cache busting. Sure. We'll output Drupal.js. Drupal. Let me make sure. So it's cat in the output. Looking for. Ooh. There's another instance. Data there. Add cache busting query string. All right. So then this is going to take the prefix and file size. So file size out file. Well, this is Drupal. Everything's just been named Drupal. So file size, WP data size. Change that to be Drupal. And we're not doing the theme name. That overwrites the prefix. File name of the main dependency. So data file name. I thought that already. All right, we cut that out because I'm not using a different data name. Just make sure. Data file name, yeah. So we can delete. We don't need this line because we're not making the data file name dynamic, but export dependency file name. Yeah, we have it hard coded. Okay. And exported. So let's look at the next step. So produce the final module. Let's see where this goes. So copy Drupal to temp, cat the prefix and the module with the suffix to the output Drupal.js and remove from the temporary directory. So that's it. And I guess the next step to do is I'm going to run it and we'll see if it builds and if it crashes and where it ends up. So the next thing to do would be to write a bash script from it. Oh, wait. Empty continuation found. Second, where did I? Oh, there. So that might break, but it's at least it's building so far. We'll see where it ends up. And let's look at this build.js and just dissect this into a bash file to make life easier. Easier is not going to be the greatest when I have to keep tabbing back and forth. So we have build. Let's just call it build.sh. Second. Again, copying some existing items. So we got a Docker build, and it's the context is in the current directory. Let's copy. We'll tag it with Drupal Playground. Why not? Actually, no. I'm calling this WASM Drupal. Progress plane. We'll keep that. All right. So there's just that build, and then it's Docker run name is WASM Drupal temp. What is it still waiting on? And realizing running it and this isn't showing all the logs the best. I'm using the multi-stage. So we're going to remove, then we need to mount the volume. So the volume would be Drupal, correct? Yep. Which means we need to make a new directory called Drupal. Do something similar to Pantheon, spin up a demo site, install various things. Spent time a while ago creating a Docker template for team members to do it. Biggest blocker was virtualization support in Windows 10. Yeah, that's the problem. Like, it's nice, and this is not an end all solution by far. This is not going to solve the demo problem, but it will be interesting, and it's going to be interesting if you can deliver a version of Drupal over the browser without a server, right? It's all running in the browser. That's going to be the interesting part. It's not going to replace true demo environments, distributing Docker images for all that. But it'll be interesting going forward. Then SHC. And let's copy this. Now I got to figure out where my service crashed. And it killed the log. All right, well, I'm not running that inside PHP Storm again. So let me bump up the terminal. All right, so let's go ahead and run that build again and see where we end up. Luckily, it should copy in some cache layers. And I think it failed where I thought it would, and that is on this echo. And maybe I need to escape that path, because those treat them as like literal variables. So let that run. Let's see where we end up. So the one interesting part is, I wonder why on the WordPress demo that it couldn't access the WordPress server. I wonder if that's because it can't write anything, so there's no access to disk. So maybe there's like something that has to be downloaded from WordPress.org and cached locally, which I wonder if Drupal is going to be broken out of the box because we compile twig templates. So if it's like it simulates like a read only, it's like a read only environment. What do we do about twig templates? We can't compile them. All right, run CP. Can't create, include non-existent directory. Oh, wait. Oh, man. Echo new line into existing file, because I don't know how to bash. Right? No. Echo append on new line. Yep, that's why. I did this wrong. So, if you ever get hung up on something and you feel bad, just remember that I have to look this up every single time I do it. So, yeah, that was wrong. All right, gonna catch up on the chat real quick. Able to add a composer container into templates so it'd build projects as soon as you did your composer. Oh, could be cool to create a Drupal site that use something like that to spin up demos based on composer valid projects. Maybe a WYSIWYG form for it. I mean, that technically is what simplytest.me does. If I can even get it running in the background, let's web form. Let's see what happens. So if I adjust that, we can see. So it's passing it to Tugboat, which essentially is doing like a build. Run CP. CP target. No, I don't want to do. What am I doing here? Oh man. And I am just not. I'm just going to put this on its own line because I'm screwing up. So like this actually. Oh, it locked up. So we pass it to Tugboat, and it is kind of like an on-demand creator of an instance. Like here, it does create project, no update, um, required drush, no update. So now it's saying composer require web form, and then it applies patches, and then it says composer update and install. So there are tools that we could use to do that, and that is what Simply Test Me does. Tugboat doesn't have you write Docker files. They have their own config that translate to something similar for a container. But with Simply Test Me, which the code is public on Drupal.org, we have done that to build like it takes in inputs and builds like the composer build setup, and then you get an environment that's delivered to you. And again, this is one that doesn't require anybody to have something on their instance, but you have to like configure and build it. It's not like, hey, click this link and you'll get a fresh Drupal site instantly. Like we had to wait for this, and I'm sure with WebAssembly you have to wait for that initial download as well. It's not all perfect. Yeah, so we were taken to a demo environment that was created. So there are solutions to this. Oop. Okay, so where did we end up? It built, and it didn't crash when going here. It made the Drupal static. So now it's building this layer. So that way we can run the Umami demo install. I should have removed op cache, but that does take makes the build take longer. But it'd be interesting if op cache is then available inside our WebAssembly tool. The other thing I haven't checked out yet is how they run it. And I'm assuming that's in the Playground client. And what you would have to do, as far as my understanding, is include the 2 JavaScript modules or files modules, and it works. I don't know how it serves with the web server, because like that first example from this PHP and browser, it gives you like a code sandbox type environment instead of actually running it. How persistent is the the WebAssembly installed app? I think it gets thrown away when the session is over, so there's no way to persist, to my knowledge. Now, like I said, I know somebody who works at a large automation company out of Milwaukee, and they send their C++ app over WASM. So there's got to be some way, and this is like enterprise level, so I'm guessing there's some way to persist data. I don't know it. And is it one that we need more bindings? Like, is it easier? What I mean by that is, with WebAssembly, is it easier to perform persisting data when you're doing it in Rust or C++ because you have more access? Whereas if it's PHP, we would need like a PHP extension that's like a PHP to WASM extension that allows persisting data across sessions. So that I don't know. Like as a preface to the beginning of this, I have not done any research into WebAssembly besides knowing that it sends binaries over the network via HTTP and just works. So I haven't dove in more, and I'm using this as like my intro to it. Let's see. Would be interesting to come along and kind of do like a Drupal garden setup for it. Maybe you could set up a bit of rework, have folks select features and stuff, and then get them through some order form to get their site to actually build. That would be like for Tugboat. And I think when somebody suggested earlier, like we have at Aqua, there is like Site Studio. So like that kind of thing where you can like, you have this guided process, you pick a few things, and at the end you have a built Drupal site. Some sort of external persistence data storage. I mean, that's what I'm assuming. So I host all my Drupal sites in the cloud. Okay, this is such a loaded term. Without a volume. So every time that I have a Drupal project, I use S3 or compatible object storage, and I don't have any volume mounts. So that way it's not tied to a specific node. So that would be interesting to basically compile Drupal with the object storage support built in. But then again, how you can configure it, how does it know what object storage it goes to? But there should be some way to plug it into an external persistent data storage. And if this fails like I think it will around compiled twig templates, that would be the workaround. But how do you make that work? I don't know. Like, how would you say when I go to this browser that it should, how should it know what S3 bucket to go to securely? I really don't know in that instance. I see they have like theme, so it's reading the theme and that's being passed into the builder. Same with mode seamless. I'm not sure what mode means. So there's a lot to unpack and dig into to be figured out. Like, that's interesting. WordPress URL. So like internally, oh wait. What is this? Like, is this its own internal? Oh, so this is what it thinks its URL is. Scope here. So there's going to be a lot of things to try to figure out and experiment with. And diving into WebAssembly this way is probably a lot harder than it would be if I just picked up Rust. Like, I know Rust. I could have probably written something that went to WebAssembly. The Bitnami pre-built image on AWS. I mean, maybe you could. I never have. I've always just built my own images, but I don't build Drupal like a Drupalist. I build Drupal like somebody who does Laravel or Symfony, where I have a lot of my stuff not in modules, not in config. I wrote my own what do you call it? Object, like S3 integration, because the existing modules don't work. But I'm also a me person. Docker PHP, SQLite 3. There we go. I know there's a trick for it, and I did not copy this out of my little toolbox ahead of time. No. I'm missing here. No package. That's not the right extension. That should be in. I don't need libxml because we're not doing SOAP. Actually, maybe we do. But yeah, I'll open this link to, yeah, so Bitnami manages various packages. I don't know what this one ends up looking like, but you could deploy it on AWS to get an instant out of the box Drupal. But again, who's paying for the AWS bill and the process for running that? Come on, what? This is not helpful. I just want the. Well, I think this is it. I think I need to run apt install. I can't remember. I know I have it somewhere, but I couldn't find that reference Docker file. So hopefully this rebuilds quick-ish. All right, so while that's running, we know we're going to have the build that creates our WebAssembly artifacts, the JavaScript modules. Drag this down so I can keep tabs on it while we dig in. So I want to move past build. So this covers the WP build as far as I'm concerned. Components, address bar, import, export. Okay. So that's the hard part, is they have this really big they built a lot of good UX around this, which is awesome. Like good user experience, but that can also make it hard when you want to pick something apart and see what's actually being used. So I don't think it's that. WP build, these are the static files that it copies over. Actually, I want to see how this works. So they have in CS images JS. So that's, oh, I wonder if that's it. So the static files are the JavaScript and whatnot. And then the .data and .js are going to be the PHP and other files. All right, so that makes sense here. Make a note. The static files are the JS, CSS images, which can be loaded by the browser. The non-static are what get compiled for WebAssembly, which means I probably have this broken if I didn't clean this up right then. So MU plugins, what's MU plugins? They're all right. That's it. So let's look at boot playground because now I want to see how they're actually loading this. So worker thread, internal worker API, worker thread, scope. So this is importing all of the PHP WASM into this file. So PHP server, PHP public API, those are coming from their PHP WASM, not necessarily this. This just generates a PHP web.js and .data, or rather here. So this is like PHP. I don't know if it's going to be the same difference, but they do have PHP server. That might be the thing that has to be implemented. So const PHP, there's set scope, server, new PHP server, document root, absolute URL, static file path, the browser and the monitor, internal worker API, start options. So PHP loader. So load the PHP module, then the WordPress module, which that's another thing too, is I am not familiar with working like JavaScript modules. I know that's like new. All right, but this worker thread is used to get WordPress module. Oh, and patch WordPress. So it finds the local module, which would be, we see in this static build. So we've got WP dash whatever. Then we have the .data and the .js. So get WordPress module, get PHP loader module. Where's this from? Inside PHP WASM. So that loads its own .js. Okay. So that makes sense. So this loads, it does some fancy work in the worker thread, but is used to load the JavaScript modules, which are the WebAssembly that contain PHP or WordPress. All right, so that was in boot playground for the worker thread. That's just a worker URL, the iframe URL, recommended worker backend, there, worker URL, web worker or iframe, service worker path. So the query, get the WordPress query PHP version. So that's interesting. If I were to come in here, and I don't know if this will do it or not, but if I said PHP equals 8.2, if I expand PHP WASM, source, PHP, is it in here? So they have 8.2. And I'm guessing this loaded it. So let's go back to here. I'm going to say and PHP equals 8.2. So that allows them to control what module gets loaded. Oh, still downloading. No. Okay, so that creates the internal then the API spawn worker PHP worker thread. So that's what we had looked at before. This creates the iframe. So I think they allow exporting what you've built, and that's what like this expose API for load, download. Not sure. So set API ready. So this mounts the iframe. So this boot playground loads it in an iframe, and then or is in the iframe itself, and then loads all the JavaScript modules. So I think this is the one to look out for, to look for. Tools, they don't provide a way to see what your PHP version is. Tools, available tools, plugins, settings. Yeah, and actually I just realized it's not even bubbling up the URL. So as I click things, it's because it's in an iframe of itself. Okay. So seamless mode, the iframe is this scope, and maybe that's just how it works when you do WebAssembly. I don't know. But I'm guessing this is how they get it to work with having a PHP server in it to handle the web requests. Yeah, just spawn the worker thread, query, gets the query. Somewhere it said something about an iframe. The config, doc root examples. So that creates the examples, index to HTML. What's in here? Okay, so this is the app for when you go to the developer, to the playground. Connect the playground. Okay, so again, a lot of this is going to be more advanced than just running it and not where I want to try to go to right away. All right. Package requirements. Alternatively, run to install SQLite. Do not want to get hung up on this. SQLite 3. This should have been downloaded. All right. Well, you know what? I'm going to just ignore that for now and at least see if we can get it running. Same with opcache. I'm going to go ahead and try to make this as small as possible so that way I can just get it running because I've got about an hour left and I'd like to see it at least. I want to have at least the WebAssembly module, whatever it is, the WebAssembly code exported and the data file. So we've got this build part down. And then it comes to just loading the JS files, which I'm assuming could be, I can do in fairly easily without like a robust build process. Whoa, I did not spell Drupal right. So let's look at, I want to look at their PHP WASM implementation. So we go to source. So again, PHP build, Docker file. Okay, so it's the same process here. Originally forked from, okay, great. Because it doesn't support ARM64. All right, so they create this, how to make. SDK. This. So if we look at this source code, right? That's what it said it copied from. Yeah, Sean Morris. All right, good. So if looks like, why didn't they just enhance this? Source Docker file. All right, so this is what they're basing off of. Okay. Wait, is this just it? No. Oh, that's WP build. Let me close that. So from zlib configures it, and then they're copying it to a. Why is there so many? I don't know why they're doing so many froms and copies when each run is its own layer. So maybe this is like a hyper optimization. That part I couldn't tell you why they would do that. Because they're just copying the same image over. All right, hey, it's installing. So that's good. It's running the installer, which means that SQLite was available, so it's all working. Compile and curses. Edit. So this is way above my head. So then they build the PHP. But it's the same process. So node width, get arg, build arg. So I'm hoping that I can still just use the original repo for this. It's PHP build, PHP library. It's PHP, here it is, PHP server.typescript. This is the one that I'm not sure on how it works. Actually, let's just look at php.typescript. PHP request. This. Load the runtime. PHP ready. PHP loader module. I need to see if is that in here. No, lib source. PHP web Drupal. Require PHP web Drupal, which I don't know where that is supposed to be. Sends PHP base, get attribute, mutations. No. It just injects a script. PHP worker, PHP binary. All right, so I don't know if this is going to be apples to apples for making it work, because it looks like the WordPress team had to do a lot of different stuff to get this to execute. Like here, this has got the Drupal 7 settings set up, and somewhere I'm assuming it's got, oh yeah, it has a database pre-configured. Where is it? Yeah, so like that's already got the settings there. It must be copied in somehow. So I probably will need to use their PHP WASM, or at least figure it out. Is URL scoped? So the scopes are like strings. And so that's interesting. Use to uniquely brand the outgoing HTTP traffic from each browser tab. This helps the main thread distinguish between relevant and irrelevant messages received from the service worker. That's interesting. So that's why there's that scope in the internal URL. Get URL scope. So maybe this is purely for their worker or their web worker, but maybe it's something that's needed in general. URLs, PHP. So yeah, there's all the PHP. What's web? iframe worker. PHP build, PHP library. All right, there's finished running. So we'll have a built image at least. This part should pass. So now we're finally at where are we at? So it's copying from app Drupal, then it's going to copy the static, which really I need to change the build process because it's not going to copy over all the static files. So actually I need to make a comment here. To do, move this to after install because demo umami adds static files to sites default files. So that will need to move around, probably not work. But it's at least running the packager, and we'll see what we end up with. Do they have a README for this package itself? No, they don't. Node. All right. I have a feeling this is getting the PHP WASM is going to be harder than I thought. PHP CLI. What is this? PHP INI. Yeah, they've done some really advanced work. All right, so we've got our image. Let's go ahead. Nope, not going to open in there. All right, so that should create everything with our output. I'm going to do, we have -- Drupal. Let me move this back up now. Docker run. So again, we're going to run it using a temporary name, automatically remove. We're going to mount the root Drupal directory for output and copy everything over. I gotta put this in quotes. Error response. Drupal has invalid characters. What? All right, for just make one here. CP missing file operand. Let me just wrap this whole thing in quotes to see. All right. So it did not do anything. Shoot. So I'm going to do at least ls output. So we've got Drupal static output. There should be oh no, wait. Root. Sorry. What is going on? instead of having it auto, let's do run, shoot. This is not what I was hoping to get hung up on. All right, I'm gonna look back at what I did wrong. This shouldn't be that. This should be the command. We're gonna run. We're gonna mount the volume. Yeah, we mount the volume. We have our image name. And it should be why is it listing I'm gonna move out of that directory. Okay, so it's a second. So the work directory is /root. There's is output. Okay, so it copied static. Let's look at what's inside output. All right, so we have it there, but it didn't copy. I probably don't know how to write anything. Why isn't this copying? So one sec, I'm gonna see if I can do ls/output. I think I know what happened. No. What? Drupal include. Why? What am I doing wrong here? It's been a long time since I've had to do things explicitly this way, so I'm still using other tooling. All right, so yeah, ls output did nothing. Here we go. Let me fix this. Use the absolute path for the mount, and I think that might be my problem. And since this is running slower, all right, there we go. Finally. Thank you. Yeah, I should have used PWD. And I have no idea how big this file is that I just opened. So I'm going to close that. Let's do LSL human Drupal. All right, so that created an 83 megabyte Drupal.data file and a 2.8 megabyte Drupal.js. Now, just for kicks, let's do index.html. Oh, talk about not having to do something in a long time. It's this. All right. I know this won't work right enough, but actually, let's go. So let's do npm init. WASM Drupal, sure. And yarn add, or let's do, I'm just going to add this script for post install. Change this, post install. I'm just going to copy them here. So that way I can just reference actually to Drupal. So let's do yarn add PHP WASM. And I'm just going to create an index file that loads it and see what happens. All right. So Drupal's got PHP web, php.wasm, Drupal data. Once the library is loaded, let's just go to the repo. Go to the GitHub Pages branch. And, you know, I probably should have done too is review how they created everything. How their CI builds their PHP.data and whatnot. I did not consider that. All right, so gtag, ace editor, we don't need that. Playground, link. All right, here we go. Script inside the body. So this is in Drupal. PHP web. Then we'll say Drupal.js. And this doesn't say anything about .data. But it does have like the default code and var PHP module init. Run. Print error PHP module equals PHP module options init. What is init? That's a callback. Sure. Then do open index HTML. See how bad this goes. Undefined token export. Great. Is that because of the, I wonder if it's because it's loading with the ESM prefix and you have to change how it's loaded because it's an ESM module, so it's not just script source. Shoot, I did not mean to close the WordPress one. So let's go back to go back to the code. All right. Or better yet, hold on. There it is. View frame source. So app root. And of course, that's just type module. Okay, that's it. That's the difference. I knew there was something. So let's see if that will fix it. So access to script has from origin no has been blocked by cores. All right. HTTP isolated app. Untrusted. Okay. So we will try this. PHPS. Errors. Failed to load module script. Expected JavaScript module script, but the server responded with a MIME type of blank for HTML spec. So it was like half running. Why? So we have the data. Oh man, we have all the dot files. So it's like half working. This is wild and a lot to clean up. Oh my goodness. Could not. What is this? Oh, that's from my Notions web clipper or something like that. All right. Well, I guess like the data got built, but it needs to have a lot more removed. So remove dot files, remove. You can remove like there's a whole lot. Um, like remove test directories. That needs to be done, and then figure out what to actually how to get to run after that. Will be interesting. But I guess let's ignore that for now. And at least just have it run. Have it run something. So what is it like? Counts PHP module equals PHP. But how does PHP get imported? It doesn't because they don't have it as a module. So it's just assumed. Post run. Init, that's fine. Editor set value. Run button. No. Click. That's why I'm trying to run it. PHP module.call. So yeah, I need to see how I can adapt their WASM or bring it in, because it's had way more work done than on here, which I guess I could expect because they have a lot of they're investing money in it. So I'm just gonna at least want to leave with something having run in this. Let's call that default code. Why is that breaking? What? Why? Oh, this is making me feel really silly because I can't figure out what I did to make this break. So again, const code equals just copy and paste all over the place. It's that. Why? I'm just going to refresh and see how bad this crashes. Yeah, uncaught. What? I think I'm going to have to call it soon because apparently I am just not even able to figure out how I managed to break these lines of code. Like, I don't even understand what I did wrong. As soon as I put anything in there, it freaks out. Module is not a function. All right. Well, PHP shell, web view. So I'm not sure why that's broken. It should be. Let's see. Options post run, print error. Post run. Let's do print text console.log text error text console.error error text. Fix this line. Yeah, it's PHP module.ccl is not a function. I'm gonna drop a debugger in here to see what it even. Oh, it's a promise. Oh, stop. No idea if I can put in a weight in there. I can't. Let's see. If I at least do that. Pause on breakpoint. Filled. And then it's going to error again. So let's do resolve, debugger. So that's one thing I didn't notice. I didn't notice they had any awaits or anything dealing with promises, but I guess I don't know. Heat ASM. Oh boy. All right, so let's do a stop. We call this PHP. Then one day say PHP CC call. We run that. Source debugger. Error text. Cannot call unknown function PIB eval. Build S. So this is still, it's working, but not at the same time. I'm going to just inspect this working source. Also, I don't know how stale the GitHub pages are compared to what's been built. So that could be the other problem too. So let's just view the source because inspecting the page is not working. So yeah, where is this loading it from? iframe, where is it? require initialize. Oh, app.js. Yeah. All right. I think this is going to take a lot more debugging because what I'm seeing is the build process is going to be way more involved than I thought, but at least started to build it. What I will do is I'm going to at least create a repo for this so that way I can start expanding the build. So first thing I do is git ignore. Yes, create file. We need that to be get ignored. Do a stop this get init, get status. Do a get ignore at the root for idea, modules. See, was there anything in build? Yeah, so build's there. Drupal has all those files into it. So this should fix that output. Let's do chmod plus x build.sh. And gets add index. I'll just add build, add Drupal.getIgnore. What? Oh. JSON, readme, get add yarn, get status, add get ignore. So there's a lot to be fixed here for the export, but the nice part is once the .data and .json .data and .json are available, then other like WebAssembly more competent people can actually tap into them and tell me what's going on. So GitHub repo create. Let's create a repo. Create a new repository. WASM Drupal. Me. Drupal and WASM. Make it public. No, because I already have that. Oh, yes. Let's add a license. Should just do MIT. Let's continue. No, I don't want to clone it locally. Oh, I thought that would like get it to work on my own. Like I thought it would already. All right, well shoot. I didn't think to create that license. I was hoping that GitHub create repo would take it from the current, like repo, but it's probably an option. And let's add it. Git add license, git commit, and edit. All right, I'm gonna do git remote add origin, git push f origin main, and make sure it's tracking. All right, so I'll share this in the chat and kind of take it from there and see how it could be toyed with, and turned into a working solution. Even if it gets running, as I said, I'm concerned that it's going to break due to Drupal needing to compile twig templates. Um, WASM writable directories, which means I actually want to take care of some issues. I'll just open some issues right away. Move static file creation to run after site install. This ensures all images from the Umami demo are captured. That we need to also remove all test directories to reduce space. That would save a lot right there, just purging all the tests, because Drupal has test fixtures. So that would save space. Dot files, test directories, yada yada yada. So that's some way to start. New issue, WebAssembly, writable stream. So yeah, like I feel like in Rust, it's got to be a lot easier to be able to write to a local directory. Will this even work if Drupal has to compile twig templates? Drupal uses Twig, which is a templating language that needs to be compiled from its domain, whatever language, to PHP code. Is read only as far as I know. So how do we even twig? WebAssembly examples. Yeah, but these are probably going to be really, really basic. Text format, converting WebAssembly text format to WASM. JS API, other examples, template understanding text. I just want to dive through this quick, and then I'll probably be signing off. Fail global memory. What? WASM. Nope. Compile streaming. XHR. Nope. Other examples. No. All right. So that would be one thing to have to figure out. Thanks for hanging out. I hope it was somewhat interesting. I would like to end up reading more about the tools involved, like this. What is it? Where'd it go? This EM scripting for the EM SDK. Just how it converts and trying to get the file size down. As I saw, LSLH. Drupal, so like the PHP JS is 150K, the PHP Web WASM's 9 megabytes. Drupal.js was 2.8 megabytes, which could possibly be pared down, but like the Drupal.data was 83. And I think that's because stuff got added in that didn't need to be. Like the .editor config, the root composer.json is not needed. So lots of that could be cleaned up. But it'd be interesting to keep experimenting with. But it might be dead in water due to the fact that we need to compile twig templates. But interesting nonetheless. I hope you all found it was interesting diving into it. And if you didn't know about this WordPress Playground, now you do. And I hope you get a chance to mess around with it. And maybe, one thing is we help contribute to this, because if WordPress gets it, then it should be easier to flip to other PHP app or frameworks applications like Symfony, Laravel, and all that. So I hope you had fun, and thanks for hanging out. I'll be back next week working on something else. Bye.